Rolling.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our broadband breakthrough program. This is our final educational session that we have through this program, and kind of a unique approach today with our ag-centric focus on broadband and broadband needs. We thought, well, we'll bring some additional information about serving the agricultural community to you today, and the market drivers for better broadband in the rural countryside. So we've got a real interesting program today. We've got two company representatives here with us today that are going to talk about their products and services and how increasingly dependent they are on quality broadband services to supply that product. And then we'll also hear from a broadband provider who's is a electric co-op turned ISP, is really focused on bringing maximum benefit to his members throughout the Joe Carroll Energy area to support these kind of advanced broadband technologies. And so it's exciting to get this underway, and I think it's going to be a very interesting morning. So we're going to start with Scott Ahrens from Advanced Agrilytics, and both of these companies, Advanced Agrilytics and Agtrinsic, were recommended to me by the Farm Bureau there in Bloomington. So that's they must be doing great work. So Sean, welcome, and thanks for joining today.
Very good. Thanks for the intro, Bill, and good here this morning. I will go ahead and share, and I will send this out afterwards. So let me grab the PowerPoint here. And have just a few quick slides to chat through to allow for plenty of questions. And just to confirm, you can see my PowerPoint of unlock potential of every acre?
Yes.
Great. All right. So Advanced Agrilytics is a company based out of Indianapolis, Indiana, started in 2013 and really focused on agronomy and really the high touch approach to managing with an unbiased. We don't sell any inputs. We are strictly consultants working with the farmer to manage inputs and decisions on the operation. And our goal is to really take a sub-acre approach. And as I talk through this, that'll be important, especially as we talk about the data that we're trying to manage from a tractor or combine with a person in a field, as well as the farmer receiving the data. We do work with 3 different business units across the industry. We have what's called our grower direct, and that's the business unit I lead, where we have a number of agronomists who are working directly with the farmers. We also have Ag Ingenuity Partners, which is a division of ours that's focused on agriculture research. We work with companies across the industry testing pre-commercial or early commercial products to determine their efficacy by environment or how that product will respond in a given landscape across the field. And then we have what we call B2B or strategic partners. All of these are critical to the conversation today when we think about data in agriculture and why rural broadband would be important, because we rely, of course, on data from the farmer directly. And then we have a number of folks who our team is all remote. And that's not just because of COVID, but that's our team is set up to be localized, working within about a 45-mile radius of their customers. And of course, trying to manage the data from a research standpoint or even from the farmer standpoint, both of those require a good internet connection wherever we are. And while that has gotten better over the years, there are still a lot of gaps in that. And so I was excited when Bill asked to kind of share the importance of a strong rural broadband connection across not just Illinois, but in rural America in general. And what we do is really focusing on how does a landscape change water movement. And that's important because we're looking at a landscape in basically 35-foot square grids. So as we look at that, we're sub-acre, meaning we're less than 1 acre, trying to understand, is the acre wet, dry, or is it what we would just call a stable or nominal acre? And this will flush out here as we think about how much data are we capturing on that sub-acre when we're trying to, think about managing nitrogen, managing a seeding rate, managing fertility, not just from a input management standpoint, but a sustainability standpoint. The more granular we can get with the data, the better off we can manage to what we're seeing in the field. And we know from experience that a product will respond differently here. So that's great. However, every one of those then requires another data point. And as we look at what data are we sending to a customer, we certainly have our agronomists who are out there that are communicating verbally with a customer. We're also thinking about what are the prescriptions. So we manage a lime prescription, our fertility recommendations for both phosphorus and potassium, corn and soybean seeding rates, nitrogen stabilizer. As we think about water quality, that's important as we continue to have tools in our toolbox to help management of the nitrogen placement so that it's most readily available for the plant and not leaching into the water supply. So that's another recommendation that we can deliver. That's another data point that we have to create. And then, of course, in order to utilize that recommendation, we have to create another data layer in our technology platform. Early season fungicide, again, another tool in our toolbox that we have fungicide available. How can we mitigate plant stress early? We can write that recommendation and deliver that to the grower or the retailer that's applying that specific recommendation. And then, of course, once we finish planting season or harvest season, we need a way to be able to get that data back. And I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with some of the technology in the cabs of equipment today. There are a lot of connected platforms, meaning they do have a data connection in the cab that they can send that data to the cloud. So once that data goes to the cloud, then it's either going to be consumed by the user via computer. It could be a cab to cab interface. It could be a cab, and I didn't put in here, a cab to iPhone or cab to iPad. Lots of different ways to consume that data. And, the thing that's probably most relevant to this group is thinking about every one of these layers, and a farmer who's trying to manage intense management practices across their operation. For us, when we look at that hex grid that we're managing of that roughly 30 to 35 feet area, we have 70 hex grids in 1 acre. And then as we think about how many attributes are we capturing, those attributes for soil sampling alone will be about 7. Then we add data for planting. We may have as applied data for sprayers or fertility that's going across that same acre. And then as we think about harvest and yield data, that would be another attribute. And that's just for 1 year. And part of this data management and complexity is that we need to get all of that uploaded from the farmer somehow, some way. And most of the time, they're trying to either take that from the cab or they put it on a jump drive into their computer to upload it to the cloud, where then we have access to it or other service providers have access to it. As we look at the minimum data points per acre, then it's about 490 data points, just minimum per 1 season in 1 cropping season, 490 data points per acre, looking at 39,200 per 80 acres. And then as we look to manage more of that information around when you think about crop phenology or how does the crop grow and other technology tools that we build onto the system to help our agronomists be able to manage with the customer. This is just simply relying on the customer data of roughly 39,200 data points per 80 acres. That doesn't include all of the other data layers that we have, thinking about a nitrogen loss layer, or what we create for our landscape position, or landscape where water moves to and from, or as we think about other attributes of potential productivity, that fungicide prediction layer. Those are all layers that add on to these 39,200 data points. So that's the complexity of, as we think about our industry that collects a lot of data, one of the challenges we have is how do we manage it effectively and efficiently? Because most of the time, just like we've experienced this spring, when it's go time, it's go time. Most of our customers and farmers across the geography have been waiting for the rain delays. And now that it's nice, it's go time, and they don't want to take time to wait on the internet to update software or download a recommendation or upload data, send that data back and forth. And that's where it becomes very critical for us, not only in the off season, but during busy time, to really have a reliable data connection where we can send and receive data, capture the information that we need to, that will help us improve the recommendations that we're helping advise customers to make. So that's a really quick snippet. I wanted to make sure we had plenty of time and stay within the limit here. So
Sean, thanks for that.
Advanced analytics.
When you are working with farmers, can you talk a little bit about some of the connectivity challenges that you face in terms of providing good service to the folks, even if their network is not very good?
Yeah, and a lot of that then requires the drive time. So if we're unable to utilize a strong internet connection to send that data, that will then require our agronomist or one of our support staff to drive out there to the respective location, be it in the field or to the farmer's shop, and deliver that information via jump drive. No floppies, that was old school, but the jump drives, and we still have to use those in a number of locations and instances because there isn't a reliable connection, and the amount of data we're dealing with, it helps just alleviate a lot of the challenges of upload and download speeds to manage that.
What kind of bandwidth is kind of what you would consider the minimum required?
Yeah, and that's a good question based off of what are we uploading most of the time, and part of this is internet bandwidth, and part of this is processing speed for the system we're uploading to. I would say, we don't do any live by way of, for us specifically, we don't do any live data streaming. It's more of an upload. So we can queue the upload and let it churn, if you will. So we don't, if we're communicating on a monitor support, then we can do FaceTime to support, over the phone, but we don't do anything else. Okay.
And how prepared are farmers to make use of all this data? They've become statisticians and data analysts, kind of a new role for farmers in a lot of ways. What are there things communities can do to help farmers be more proficient at that as a community? Or is that something your job takes care of?
One of the advantages of our services is that we're managing that data, and if need be, we can go get the data and bring it back and do the old-fashioned way of the jump drive and that manual process. For the most part, I would say the ag industry and farmers in general have come a long way in adopting the technology, utilizing data services. because it does streamline the ability to access data on your phone, your iPad, and that comes with tools like be it Climate Field View or John Deere Operations Center or other applications that a number of companies have that make it a somewhat easier access or easier process. And it's funny, just talking last week with some individuals about the old dial-up days and AOL and all fun. The biggest thing is not only the internet zip files, how do I compress files, things like that can help in the data management space of you can't send individual files. You have to be able to zip those, and sometimes navigating that can be a bit hard. And then the other part of it is an industry problem, not necessarily a community problem. It is a challenge of everybody has their own unique way of writing code or reading code into a monitor. So for instance, I'll compare it maybe of what you might be more familiar with. If you're a Mac user or a PC user, they all have different file extensions. A Mac uses one file extension, PCs use another one. John Deere and Case and Ag Leader and all the Trimble, they all use different types. Now there is one generic file called a shape file that can be uploaded and managed into those systems. That part of it is not yet as consistent as what it could be or should be for a more positive user experience for the customer.
Sean, is your product more data tables or is it a lot of GIS mapping? Is it visual?
We actually utilize both for our internal employees. They will use GIS data and table data. So we do a lot of our data analytics for our customers in systems like Tableau, if anyone is familiar with that. And then we will use for the customer facing, that is primarily GIS based.
Okay, good. What's next? What's on the horizon?
Well, we really didn't get into satellite imagery or data or any of the drone imagery, which then adds another pile of data, large data sets on top of what we already create just from the equipment side and the soil sampling. What I'll call the table stakes of foundational data collection for a farmer. As we start to add in systems like drones, aerial imagery, as those become more ubiquitous, both as an industry option and farmer accessibility, I think those data layers are going to continue to grow. Then as we look at crop prediction systems, meaning when do I plant, when did I plant, what crop growth stage are we at based off of the weather. Now you add weather data of not only temperature, but we also want to pay attention to solar radiation. So we're tracking how many days of solar radiation and units did we capture. Evapotranspiration, those are also data points that we start to add in and need to be accessible to our people in the field. So those just compound very quickly as we think about not only daily weather, but as we get more granular, we need to get to an hour by hour weather forecast. So those things will all continue to compound the data connectivity piece that we've just always dealt with in rural America.
Good. Well, good. Thanks so much for joining today. Are there any other questions? I think we've got a pretty ag aware community here in our group. And so I bet this is very reinforcing to what they see and hear about at the cafes in their community on a regular basis. Yeah, and we'll Sean, you're going to be providing those slides, and we'll make those available as always through Nancy. So thank you. Thanks so much for joining today.
Absolutely.
Really appreciate it. Thanks, Sean.
Good.
You're welcome. Thanks for the invite.
Our next participant is Lydia Bain, and she's with Extrinsic, and she's going to help us view a presentation done by her boss, Scott Plato, who was unable to be with us today, but he assured us we'd be in great hands with Lydia. So welcome, Lydia.
Hi, welcome. I am trying to get this to work, so 1 second, bear with me.
Okay. We've got a recorded presentation.
I just wanted to let everybody know, while Lydia is queuing that up, that they are able to rename themselves with their team name as well. I received a message about that, so wanted to let everyone know they can do that.
Okay, let's see if this works. If it should start sharing sound as soon as I start it, so let me know if it doesn't.
Okay.
Oh, goodness. Whoops, of course I just lost it also. Convenient. Okay, can you guys see my screen?
We can.
Correct? Okay, all right, let's see if the sound works. I clicked share sound, so we will see. I can't hear that. Can you guys?
We
I
don't
listened
hear.
earlier. It took a while for the
Okay.
sound to start. I think he was.
Okay, let's see.
Oh.
Mm. Oh, that's frozen. Technology is the best and the worst at the same time.
It is, and this is a little. We haven't done much of this kind of thing, so
Yeah. Goodness. Okay, let me try to stop share and see if I can get it back. Sorry about this. 1 second.
that's all right. Remember to breathe.
I'll tell an embarrassing story while you're trying to do this. Robbie and I went in to present to somebody, and they were on a brand new system and couldn't even figure out how to share our slides. So we ended up just winging it.
Oh, no.
It was
That's what I meant to
somebody-
do. When I get
Yeah, no. You at least have your picture up there, so no worries.
Okay, let's try this again. Let's see. Okay.
And of course, I can also mention to folks that we're still sort of deep in analysis, and counties can just plan to be patient for 2 weeks after their close date for their surveys. But they should hear before then. Just wanted to kind of mention that because I know counties are starting to wonder, and really excited to see results, but we've got to wait a little bit longer because we're right in the middle of this. So thank you.
So Lydia, there's somebody here who has said that you have a checkbox on share, check to share sound. It is at the bottom.
Okay,
So-
that's checked. So we'll see
Okay.
if it
Yeah.
works.
I love everybody kibitzing, but hey, we'll take the help, right?
Yes, I do appreciate the help. All right, let's see if I press present, if we can hear him. What the heck? Okay, I might just.
Lindsay, why don't you know the company, so it's if you want, you can just go go through the slides to the best. you
Yeah. Yes, they may not be as perfect as Scott would have liked them, but let me just do that. So oh
Maybe
my
they'll be
goodness, no.
better.
We can hope. Okay, let me do that. Let me get back to it, and then we will I'll have to just click through them. So I'm not used to Zoom, so that's part of the problem also. All right. Sorry about that, guys. Okay,
That's
so
all
I
right.
will go through. Here we go. We'll just go through Agtrinsic. So sorry for the smaller screen. Let me see if I can make it a little bit bigger without going into the PowerPoint. Whoops, that's too big.
That
Okay.
looks fine.
Perfect. All right, so this is Agtrinsic. So a little bit of background. I will click into this. So Scott, who recorded the audio that we can't hear, is my manager. He is really the science and the brains behind Agtrinsic. I am the business relationship specialist, so I handle all external operations outside of Evergreen FS within Agtrinsic. So we're throughout other member companies, other FS member companies in the GrowMark system. We will go into the territories here in a little bit, but that's what I do on a day-to-day basis. So let me make you guys small because I can't see the words on here. Okay. So our area of focus here in this meeting is the description of our service, bandwidth requirements, requirements for farmer interaction, drone trends, and barriers to adoption and use. So a description of our service here with Agtrinsic. Here's our mission statement here on the screen. You guys can read that. But really the point of Agtrinsic is to make our salespeople's lives easier and help farmers get the most information possible at the most convenient times on their fields. So really we generate deeper connections through the information that we have in our app, which I'll go into here in a little bit. And just really form the way farmers can see fields. It goes into what our app does for the growers. So this information on how Agtrinsic is different from a traditional scouting platform. So Agtrinsic is a scouting platform. Sorry, I didn't go over that one. But it customizes when we're in your field. So we have scout routing that gets people to the fields at the correct time that the farmer wants them in the fields. Then we also give real-time notifications on those in-field issues. We predict disease outlook, upstage, satellite imagery, drone scouting, analytic disease, along with some market information on there. So it's a little bit different than just the traditional boots in the ground scouts. We don't have any paper trail. There is an option to print off papers, but there's no like paper transfer like there was back when scouting was more in its beginning stages. But there is the typical identifying of disease, scouting reports, and we also have corn rootworm trap findings on Agtrinsic.
Lydia?
Yeah.
Hi, you're actually breaking up a little bit, and so maybe you should turn off your video.
Okay. Let's try that. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
All right, let's try this out. So Agtrinsic, our solution is a customer acquisition through the assimilation of new technology. So we really leverage new ideas like the pathogen detection that we're going to go into, which is our big selling point of Agtrinsic. And we're trying to focus on digital enabled sales on every acre. So we really want all of the sales in Evergreen FS and our member companies we work with to have some sort of digital information behind why the farmer or the grower buys that product. So here's a quick background of Agtrinsic. So we really started with Scott collecting data in 2014 and 2016. That was data collection on a microclimate level. So he was looking at different sensors he had in the fields to figure out what ground temperature was and humidity needed for a disease to grow. Then in 2017, we started the Evergreen FS scouting program. That was a formalized program, but only 7,000 acres. And that was just boots on the ground. And they had scouts going to the fields at every 2 weeks to 7,000 acres worth of fields and studied the aerial imagery based off what the scouts were seeing in those fields. In 2021, which is when I started at Evergreen, we had Agtrinsic version 1. This was a branded program for the first time. And it was on a platform that we focus on the science behind it and not the aesthetic behind it. So it really focused on the routing of drone and boots in the ground scouts and API integrations, along with our broad scale disease model. So this is the first year for Agtrinsic. Then last year, we released Agtrinsic version 2, which was a web-based application that had advanced scouting features, and we introduced our spore cams into it, and we started the patent process on our disease modeling. And it's also included AI field ranking. Then this year we have AgTransic version 3, which will be in the slides here coming ahead, which had a new user interface. We went to new developers that were able to make it just prettier, for lack of better words. And that had an enhanced analytics, and it's also an iOS platform. We have more APIs on this platform, and we also have more scouting reports. In the future, we're looking at various different things. Advanced analytics are on the list, nutritionals, nitrogen stabilizers, advanced yield, post-harvest reporting, and we're open to any other ideas that our users throw at us. So some information here. AgTransic was recently listed number 4 on CropLife's best agriculture apps of 2023. And then, oh, that looks like it's a duplicate slide. And then right here is a picture of our broad scale disease model. So we have spore cams, which are basically little, if you think of like a coffee canister, that's what they look like. They're in the fields or in the areas, and they're picking up which type of pathogens are being detected in the area of disease. So here on the screen, you can see the 7 diseases that the spore cameras pick up. It's just your common corn and soybean diseases in the area. So we have those all over basically the southern 2/3 of Illinois, and we're going in a little bit into Iowa, Indiana, a little bit into Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Ohio. So, but really we're focused on the southern 2/3 of Illinois. That's where most of our members companies are, and that's where most of our growers need information at the current date. So that's a pathogen map of what it looks like on AgTransic today. We can see over here the exact counts of the spore cams picking up. We can see it on a spore cam by spore cam basis or a field level basis. So every field level field that's being affected by the spore cameras, you can click on that and see which pathogens are being detected and how many, and what the severity level of those are. This little map here in the center shows us the wind speed and wind direction of where those pathogens or where the disease is spreading. So just kind of gives a model, and that's what our patent is pending on, is our disease model. Our next slide here is bandwidth and communication requirements. So I'm sure Scott talked about this way better than I will, but I will roll with it. So this slide here is showing what our scouting looks like within AgTransic. So we have scouts that are routed to the fields every single day, and they are routed based off of the planting date and the crop stage. So if we want the scout to be there at V2, then the scout will be there at V2 based on the AI routing of AgTransic. So this kind of goes into our bandwidth and communication requirements. So a big factor in AgTransic is cell connection. So when the scout gets to that field, and past AgTransic's, like the past versions, if the scout had no cell connection, they really couldn't scout because they had no way to load the field, to figure out how to get to the field, and let alone drop pins with pictures and notes and things like that. So that was a big problem within AgTransic. Our solution for that this year is offline scouting. So now a scout in the morning logs into their AgTransic account at their location. So we know there's Wi-Fi or cell service at their location. They download their route for the morning, and then it has like whatever their fields are. So let's say there's 10 fields, they're already downloaded. They are already telling them how to get to those fields based on the Google Maps that it uses to route them there. And then once they get to that field, they can drop pins, and they can have notes, pictures, everything like that you would typically have in a scouting pin on AgTransic, but it's just offline. So then as soon as that scout gets back to cell service, either at the end of the day when they drop their iPad off at their location, or just as they're driving along the road, if they start to get cell service, then their iPad will auto upload those reports to the cloud, and that will get to AgTransic. So that's been a big feature in AgTransic that we're super excited about. But it was also just a requirement for AgTransic to work is to have cell connection. So that's a big struggle that we're currently dealing with, but at least we have a solution for it this year. This slide here, I know Scott would talk about it more than I, because he has the science behind it, but that's okay. So these are our spore cams. So those are the little coffee canisters like I was talking about. Those are the spore cams, and those pick up the pathogens like we had talked about. So this is what our patent is pendant on. And these charts here are all the science behind it. So really, Scott has done a lot of research into figuring out what time of day pathogens are most likely to occur, So we can see here they're most likely to occur in the beginning of the day or in the middle of the day, like about 6 to 6 is what we're averaging and we're planning on. Let me see if I can move these around. Maybe I can't. Nope, he hasn't moved there. I'm sure when he does the PowerPoint, they click in. So, but this just is another form of cell connection that we need. So these spore cams need some sort of cell connection to the cloud to be able to give us the information. I am not sure the specifications on that. Scott would know more about that information, but in order to get the information to AgTrinsic, we need some sort of cell connection. And obviously, as we get more and more rural in Illinois, it's harder to find that cell connection for the spore cams to get that information to us. The next slide we're going to talk about is drone trends. So when I listened to this initially, I know Scott talked about how we initially started with flying PHX drones. So they're a Centera product. They're just like a fixed wing drone that takes a stand count over fields. So that was very basic. We flew 50,000 acres in 7 days based off of AgTrinsic's routing abilities. But as this slide says, we've stopped doing that. So we have growers, we have other member companies that I deal with that are still into drones and still use them on a scale. It's not as broad of a scale as we were doing that year. It was 2021 that we did the 7 days of 50,000 acres. But in Evergreen's territory, we've stopped doing this. This is basically because there was data transfer issues within the Centera product to get to AgTrinsic. It would usually take like a day or two to get there, and running the data was a very lengthy process. But it also was a problem on the drone flights not being able to happen at the time that the grower needed them. So once they were flown usually at V4 or late V2 to V4. So that was a little bit too late for a grower to make a replant decision. By the time they got the data, it was already too late to decide. And it was not super efficient. And to be quite frank, people in our territory just didn't care. They didn't care about the pretty little map that showed that there was low growth over the areas that they always knew were going to have low crop growth. And we feel like there's better ways to be able to see this information. So that is why we've stopped using drones. If we have a member company that wants to use drones, we still have an API connection that will get the Centera imagery into AgTrinsic, but it was not exactly what we wanted it to be. And so that's why we have stopped at this point. Barriers to adoption and use. So the first one is this marketplace challenges. There's just really a tech fatigue in the marketplace, and we're seeing that in every single aspect of our business. It's really brought by several different occurrences of failures within other ag technology and their customers, and then reputations that have suffered due to just missteps and being unreliable and failure and things like that. So that's just causing a tech fatigue. And if people are interested in technology, they sometimes are just really leery of using it. The messaging and delivery on imagery and data has damaged technology. We know that there's been some failures with airplanes in the past. We don't use airplanes for the most part. We use airplane for imagery in some parts of our territory, but there was a lot of failure early on with airplanes not being able to fly when they said they would, and not following through with what they were promised. So then the cost is just out of alignment, especially with airplanes. It is extremely expensive to fly an airplane over your territory. And a lot of times you have to fly it over your entire territory. So for example, if Evergreen were to do airplanes, they'd have to fly over Bloomington Normal, which, as we know, there's a lot more, Walmart parking lots than there is fields in Bloomington Normal. So we're paying for every single acre, even though it's not farmland. So it just makes it a little bit more difficult to justify the cost and to be able to adapt and grow with customers when there's just been so much tech fatigue in the past with using it. This is a map here of where AgTrinsic is in the marketplace. You can kind of see all the FSs that we are servicing. We are only within GrowMark or flag flying FSs right at the moment. We're looking at expanding. We will not expand within the GrowMark territory to a non-FS grower or user, if that makes sense. So we will not expand in Illinois to a non-FS company. So our marketplace covers 25 million acres, 8 states, 17 companies, and 6 different crops. We are getting into wheat and rice down in the southern boot heel of Missouri. This image right here is where our spore cams are. Like I said, we're focusing on the southern 2/3 of Illinois. We're a little bit more north right as of today than when this picture was taken, but this gives you a better picture where those spore cams are. There's an algorithm that Scott uses on where those spore cams need to be placed, but it's roughly about 25 miles apart from each other. In some territories, we can go a little bit further apart if there's no fields, but that is roughly where we need them to be. We place those spore cams as of today at a member company location. So for example, like the Champaign location of Illini IFS will have a spore cam. That just makes it easier for it to be out of the way so a grower doesn't have to move it onto their field when they need to enter it to spray or plant or harvest, things like that. So it's just more out of the way and easier to use. And we ideally are going to keep these up all year. And then we can collect pathogens. Obviously, the pathogens we would mostly care about would be coming in during those during the summer months, but just for further data collection, we will keep those up. So future development of Agtrinsic, we are working every day on getting more APIs within Agtrinsic. Currently, we use Leaf as our digital hub for all of our API connections, and we connect to all these different companies. MyFS Agronomy is Growmark's product, which is being built, but once that is built, they're hoping by the end of the 4th quarter of this year, if not earlier than that, then we will have a connection to MyFS Agronomy. We also have IBM Weather, AgMRI. Our platform was built by the developers that built AgMRI, so it's easy to connect to AgMRI for us. Then we also have connection with Ceres, My John Deere, Augmenta, Climate Field View, and AgVance. So that is the end of our presentation. If you have any questions, you can feel free to let me know. But also if you have any need or any want to hear more about Agtrinsic, you can always, that is Scott's number on the screen, I believe, or you can shoot me an email, which my email is also on the screen. So we are always open to answer any more questions.
Lydia, thanks so much. We really appreciate the presentation, and we know that when Nancy sends out the link, people will be able to listen to Scott's presentation and,
yes.
and fill in a few of those spots. But I think you did a great job for our audience on this, and I really appreciate the candor on the challenges in the marketplace. That we all know that we love our computers when they work, but when they don't, there's challenges, and any kind of technology, especially in the cutting edge like this is can be a challenge, and some things work and some things don't, and you move on. So that was really interesting. When you talk about scouts, those are actually humans.
Yep. Yep. We hire mostly college interns just because that's the easiest way to find them. And there has been challenges with that, to be honest. Like we all know there's employment challenges throughout probably the US, but definitely Illinois. And so finding scouts has been more of a challenge this year than ever before. But we have a lot of scouts that come from the University of Illinois or Illinois State University. That's where most of ours come from, an occasional one from Iowa State too. But we really target the big ag programs within U of I and Illinois State. Okay,
well, it's good to hear that those colleges are at least fulfilling a good part of the need for your workforce.
Yes, they are.
Good, and so Agtrinsic is a cooperative, is that correct?
Agtrinsic is owned by Evergreen FS. So Evergreen FS built it. So Evergreen FS is a cooperative. So Agtrinsic is just really a product that Evergreen owns at this point. Yeah, at this point, that's the answer for it.
Good. Well, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Awesome.
Any questions for Lydia? When you think about those data files and as farmers working to understand those, are you sending lots of data back and forth to the farmers and big data files, or what's your interaction like with your farm community?
Yeah, so really everything just flows directly into Agtrinsic. That means all satellite imagery, all scouting reports, everything like that is available on Agtrinsic. So communication wise, we only communicate, like there's a digital agronomist within our team that looks at the imagery and the alerting that's in Agtrinsic, and then that information is communicated to the grower. But really no data is shared outside of the data that is within Agtrinsic with that satellite imagery and those scouting reports.
Okay. And so people are subscribed then to your app to make
Yep.
use of that?
Yep. Yep. They pay their member company. We bill the member company. The member company bills their growers if that's what they want to do. But every member company does it a little bit differently.
Okay. And so you serve kind of ag cooperatives and then they
Yes.
serve their customers.
Yep. Exactly.
Okay. Good. Very interesting. And the supply chain kind of and sales chain, that's got to be very interesting to be coordinating all of that.
Yes, it is. It's different every day.
Good. Well, Lindsay, Lydia, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, no problem.
There's a question, what broadband transfer capability, what kind of bandwidth do you think farmers need to really make full use of your product? Do you have a feel for that?
I don't know the exact answer on that one. I would say really just good Wi-Fi or good cell service is doable because it's on your iOS application or your iPhone. So as long as you have access to it, you probably need some sort of data speeds that are fairly decent. We don't need anything too crazy, but just to be able to load it. If it doesn't load in a proper time, it will time out. But I don't know the exact number on that answer. But yeah, really just good Wi-Fi. It's nothing too crazy to be able to use it.
Do people use this a lot from their own desktops then as well, or just mobile?
Yeah, the iOS is brand new, so we will figure that answer out in about April or here coming up soon once crops get planted in the territory. But I would imagine people will use it a lot from their phones, just to be able to scroll through real quick and look at their fields. But we do have the web application also, which is commonly used too.
Okay, good. So as always, the answer now is always everywhere. We want it
Yes.
on the phone, we want it in the office, and
Yep.
Good. Well, thank you so much, and hopefully you won't find too many pathogens this year.
Yes, we hope not. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Jesse Shackleton, and he's works with Joe Carroll Energy in San Prairie Internet Service and another cooperative. And Jesse's was part of a cohort in his home community over the last year or so with the Accelerate program. And now he's as a presenter talking about his roles in ISP and trying to spur the use of adoption or use of technology by farmers. Jesse, welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Bill, and glad to be here. Absolutely. And real quick, Bill, just a quick recap. You're going to pull up my presentation for me then?
Yeah, doing that right. Doing that right now. But
excellent. Well, my presentation is not going to be as technical as what Sean and Lydia provided, although their presentation definitely those are the types of great tools that are out there. And I know we talked about adoption issues, things like that. I think there's another key element to adoption, and that's relevance. And sometimes different users of certain services, if they don't know what's out there, then they might not think it's relevant to them. So again, this is a perfect example of some really good technologies that are out there, and it's a good segue into the ISP side, which is where we live, building out our fiber to the premise initiative, and how we can help enable these technologies by bringing what we like to just call fiber to the field, essentially.
Good. I just want to make sure that I'm showing the full screen and not my preview.
Yep, full screen is up.
Okay, good.
Excellent. All right. Well, again, thank you, everyone, for allowing me to spend a little time with you this morning. My name is Jesse Shackleton. I'm Director of Broadband Operations at Joe Carroll Energy. Joe Carroll is Joe Davies and Carroll County hyphenated. We are up in the northwest corner of Illinois. We are a traditional electric cooperative incorporated in 1939 to do something different than closing the digital divide. We were actually incorporated to close the electric divide back then. So we're kind of in phase 2 now, doing something that we were very successful doing back in 1939. And one keynote I should mention, since we're very ag focused on this group today, is the farm bureaus of Joe Davies and Carroll County were instrumental in the creation of this co-op, because it was conversations across fence lines back in the 30s when the farmers didn't have electricity, and it was the two farm bureau offices that helped take the application to the to DC for the under the Rural Electrification Act to incorporate the co-op as we know it today. So we definitely have a lot of strong ties back with the Farm Bureau. The framework that you see up here on the screen, again, this is what Bill and Adrian and the entire team on this cohort is already taking you through. It's just another form or another look of it. The opportunity, if you want to go to the next slide as we get through this, the opportunity is obviously the funding. This is unprecedented funding, obviously, and I'm sure you guys have probably already talked about this to some degree, at least in the cohort discussion. But specifically in the Connect Illinois program there at the bottom, you see there's, we're with the BEAD funding. I think we're earmarked right around $1 billion coming into the state of Illinois. So we're going to have upwards of $1.5 billion of broadband investment in the state of Illinois. And, I think it's really exciting because, laying out that fundamental foundation of fiber throughout our rural Illinois and the unserved and underserved areas is really just the foundation. I'm really excited about the value stack. The things that you guys are all discussing here, obviously it's an ag focus right now, but there's so many other items that can be stacked on top of that. And I'm really excited to see what our local rural communities can do with this key asset as it gets built out over the next few years. Next slide, please, Bill. So again, we are a cooperative, as I stated, and just like Lydia stated, even the FS Farm Service Groups, they're a cooperative model. I know Jay's on the phone here with McDonough Telephone Cooperative, and I know there's a lot of ISPs out there that are not cooperatives, but they do have strong ties and definitely a key focus on community. But I would be remiss if I didn't at least give a shout out to the co-op model. I might be a little bit biased, but we definitely have in our core values, a strong tie to our community, a commitment to our community. And so I think it's just definitely worth calling out all of our effort on that front. For those of you that are co-ops, you probably understand there's the 7 cooperative principles. Number 6 and number 7 are key. Number 6 is cooperation amongst cooperatives, and number 7 is our concern for community. And speaking of cooperation amongst cooperatives, I work very closely with Jay as a telephone cooperative and his team. They provided some really good guidance for us as we ventured from the electric into the ISP space up in Northern Illinois. So thank him for that. Next slide, please. Again, I think a shout out to the ISA team and the Broadband Breakthrough Group and everybody on the cohort here, because a lot of what I show here, this is that value stack that I was talking about, and you guys call that out on the website when you go to the Broadband Breakthrough site and look at that. You already call out all of these things, even though I know we're talking a lot about smart ag. But we understand for the folks that aren't farmers, there's still increased property values. There's the K-12, the remote school, the remote work, all the economic development, cost benefit analysis, and again, the list just goes on and on. So a huge opportunity here for us in rural Illinois for sure. There at the bottom, I do reference real quick, Bill, if you want to go back real quick, I do reference at the bottom of that last slide there, the cost benefit analysis for EPB. That's a municipal utility, very close to a co-op model down in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and then the Indiana co-ops also. There's 2 cost benefit analysis white papers that are out there. They're out there, publicly available. I'm sure somebody on the team here could help navigate to them or provide them if needed. But they really do a good job of itemizing out the cost benefits over the different sectors, including what fiber can do for the increased revenue to farms, et cetera, and tax base for counties and things of that nature. So 2 good documents if you get a chance, if you haven't seen those. Next slide, please, Bill. So again, we started out as a WISP actually back in 2009. So we were providing wireless service, and in Northwest Illinois, a good amount of our service area is beautiful hills and trees. It's the southern tip of the Wisconsin driftless area. Not real good for wireless. Our OpEx just was real high. It just wasn't a really sustainable platform for us. And so that was one thing, just on the technology piece and what it was physically capable of. But the other piece is what's on the screen here. The trend that we're seeing in how people are using the internet right now continues to go up. And I know we talk about broadband speeds and unserved and underserved in the definition. We talk about thresholds of 25.3, 100 by 20, 1 gig symmetrical, a gig down, a gig up. We talked about all these different elements, and we felt if we're going to do this, let's do it once and do it right, so we're future proof and we can scale well into the future. Because right now, those estimates, we're going to be looking at speeds required that are going to be well above 5 gig by 2030 if the trend lines continue. And I think a lot of the experts in the industry see no reason why they won't. So a lot of data is being consumed. And it needs to be consumed in real time, as we've been hearing. So next slide, please, Bill. I wanted to emphasize the importance and the value of outreach, collaboration, and partnerships. And that's exactly what you all are doing with this cohort initiative. As Bill mentioned, we participated about a year ago, I think in September. We were on the Whiteside County cohort, and we went through the interview process with them. And at the end of the day, Whiteside County selected us as the local cooperative ISP, and they allocated $3 million of their roughly $11 million of ARPA funds. So similar to Champaign County that you, I think, have all heard about 25% of their ARPA funds that they were able to allocate to the much needed broadband in the region. And they realized the economic impacts and quality of life for their for the folks in rural Whiteside County. So that was a great announcement. In fact, we're working on the applications as we speak, and are probably just weeks away from submitting our first series of applications for the Whiteside County project. But again, it's not just the counties. This list, the groups that I have on here, it's much bigger than this. The team effort and collaboration that goes into it, and the focus areas are different for everyone. And again, I know we're talking about an ag focus today, which is extremely important, to rural Illinois as an industry. It's what I would like to say, one of the fundamental backbones of our state. The ag industry. So it is definitely key and vital to support that on its growth initiatives and technology. But outside of that, we have other interest areas, just like the education sector and workforce development. So, some of these conversations we're having with the ag sector and our farm bureaus, for example, is we're providing them with smart ag, white papers, infographics, all the publications that are being created to help pass it on to like their youth programs. Maybe to inspire our future farmers and help get them engaged in thinking about innovation and innovative ways that they can leverage the fiber, for example, and come back to us, our local co-op provider, and let us know how we can help enable what you need. I'm not going to pretend to be the ag expert, but I'm certainly here to roll up my sleeves and work side by side and help get a product out to the field, whatever that might be. A little sneak peek into Jesse's brain. I envision these little Great Plains out of South Dakota makes these hinging poles, and you see them at railroad crossings all the time. And I envision mounting on that a low bandwidth and or high bandwidth solution like a LoRa for IoT sensors that can cover huge areas, or maybe even a higher bandwidth, maybe a little bit of a shorter range, but still a higher bandwidth private CBRS apparatus on that same structure. Again, go to the county, get it all approved. But the nice thing about the hinging pole is I know, because of us being a wireless, you don't have to go out and follow strict OSHA laws and have climbing certified employees. I mean, you reduce the safety factor of so many things. So, again, I think we're very innovative. Co-ops, we're gritty. We were born a lot basically from farmers, and we know how farmers will roll up their sleeves and they'll take on a challenge and they'll get it done. So we carry through a lot of that, a lot of the same passion. So anyway, it's just those key partnerships. Getting close down here, getting close to the end of the presentation here, but I like to, just make sure you're surrounding yourself with good people. I mean, we all know what it takes to bring a team together. You want to surround yourself with like-minded people. You want to trust the people you're surrounded with, and you'll know if it's a good fit as you guys continue with your cohort initiatives here. But these are some really good quotes that I've peeled out from different groups back from our initiative and our cohort. And again, these are NACO, the Association, National Association of Counties, the Illinois Association of County Board Members. NRECA is the National Rural Electric Cooperative Association. Next slide, please. And then a couple key ones here. If you look at that second one, you guys might recognize that. In fact, I wanted to take a minute and just call out a shout out to the ISA folks on the April edition. I read that in its entirety, cover to cover, the latest Field and Bean issue, the broadband issue. And I know so many great articles within that. I forwarded it down to our internal team here and say, you guys have to read this cover to cover. So kudos to everybody that contributed to that. That was a really good read. And so I peeled out a couple quotes. That second one there, you see Todd Main, and then the other one there, and Adriana, from your portion of that, the broadband breakthrough to additional counties where farmers and farm businesses are such vital drivers of state and local economic growth. And you can't say that enough. What I didn't put on here is, let's see, there was the CEO, John, said, so buckle up and join our mission. We promise it's going to be big. So I love the energy in the message. And then also one of your directors, Scott Gaffner, quoted, and I have to call out because I'm a huge Top Gun fan, but of course I feel the need for speed. So again, that kind of harkens back to our initiative with the fiber build out. The next slide is really just, those of you that are economic development folks, you might recognize this as just a real general framework, but I think that lower left, industry cluster development, I think you could almost call out the ag sector in and of itself because it is such a huge, big, important part to the discussion right now. So again, I just threw this in here just for a point of conversation, but this really sums up a lot of what we're doing. I mean, we're trying to bring in the SMEs and the experts in all these different areas and to accomplish and point at the same goal and get it done and get this adequate broadband out there for all of rural Illinois. And I'm getting down to the last few here. These were just a couple good infographics. I know I mentioned Jay's on the phone. These are from NRECA, the Electric Co-op Association, kind of our sister co-op and association group is NTCA, and they represent the telephone co-ops and other ISPs in the country. So that's on Jay's side of the house, but they put together some really good infographics that are very ag specific that I thought was just worth just flashing up here on the screen. So I really like that first one. Since 1948, the amount of land and labor in the U.S. farms has declined, yet total farm output has increased by 200%. So, I mean, we're almost asking our farmers to do more with less. And so I think these efficiency improvements, it's pretty clear, are going to be vital to the future of farming. Next slide was just one more little shout out. Same group, the Foundation for Rural Service. That's a division of NTCA as well. But again, it just kind of calls out. I mean, rural America represents 20% of the population, and but you can kind of see we can quantify and put some real numbers to it. We still represent a big part of our national economy, and we don't want to be left behind. And so, I just thought that this was a really neat slide to share with everybody. And I guess on the last slide here, my only takeaway is, continue your efforts, keep the energy high, roll up those sleeves, use all that rural grit and determination that we all have, and what we were basically born from. And I wish you all the best of luck in your initiatives down there in your respective counties. So can open it up for questions, Bill. Oh, you're muted, Bill.
What is the excitement level of your farm community as you roll out your fiber?
It's very exciting, really. I will say, I don't know, going back to Sean and Lydia's presentations, you talk about relevance from a smart ag perspective. I think everybody's smart to get the fiber to their home and their farm office for obvious reasons. But I don't think people really understand yet the relevance of, Wi-Fi-ing a field with, the IoT sensors, both for low bandwidth and high bandwidth. I still think that relevance, and of course, before we even get to utilization and adoption, we first have to get out there and help these farmers understand the different technologies that they can use today. And then just ask the service providers like FS, for example, and Sean and Lydia's groups to come and work with come and have discussions with the local providers like the telephone and electric co-ops that are providing services and other ISPs.
Well, it's going to be interesting with the Agtrinsic, their monitors, they said, are 25 miles apart, but I think we're going to see a lot more sensors, right at the field edge, in the ditches, monitoring water and pollution and all those kind of things.
And I showed a slide. Our goal is, and our board took a position, our electric service area, what didn't cover border to border an entire county, just the way the electric service areas were created in decades past. However, with broadband, it was a different story. It didn't make sense for us to go to the county and be like, hey, write a letter of support. We're going to build out fiber. But by the way, we're just going to take care of the west side of the county. And, good luck with the east side. So because we're a co-op, that's our model. That's our vision. There's still rural people on the east side of the county per se. And so our mission is our long-term goal is we will make sure that everybody has equal access to these fiber services and anything that we can value stack on top of them.
What drove the decision by your co-op to get into broadband? Is that staff?
Well,
was that
it was good old fashioned, the member owned piece of the co-op. It was member owners that went to their respected directors in their districts and called our office and wanted to talk to our CEO. And they basically voiced their concern and said, listen, you're a co-op, we own you, we're member owners, we love our co-op, but you provide value add services. They sent a pretty strong message that this was one value add service they could wait no longer on. And they came to us and said, let's find a solution.
Was that
so it was a traditional grassroots effort.
Was that an organized effort or just many voices speaking individually?
It was both. We had many voices speaking individually, and then we did have a couple more organized, mainly from some of our municipal member communities that came to us.
Interesting. Yeah. And I try and encourage people to remind them that those are democratic organizations.
Yeah.
And owner, and that's a big thing. So good. Somebody's asking about the density of population in how many passings do you have per mile there, Jesse?
Oh yeah, great question. So when we're out in our rural footprint, so I'll look at it, I'll itemize it for you. We're roughly about, and again, I'll take an average between our 3.5 county footprint. We're probably in that 5.5 to 6 premises per mile out in the rural footprints. But because we do serve some of our smaller communities, the municipalities, and we don't have any, I think our largest municipality that we serve is population 3,500, right? So these are small communities, 700, 1,000, up to a couple at 3,500. When we factor all of those in, then obviously that increases it to around, I believe, around 9.5 when we include the communities.
And then are you finding that there's, it's not necessarily how many homes are there, but how many opportunities to connect? So are you connecting ag facilities as well as homes?
100%. Yeah. When we say fiber to the premise, it literally means whatever that, or fiber to the X, whatever you want to, whatever is servable and is a request to serve, we will bring fiber to that. Absolutely.
And
Bill,
how
can I
how
make
did you
a,
handle right away? Obviously, you already have your own poles. Are you burying or are you putting it on poles or?
Great question. We started out, the economics of it are much better for us to utilize, underbuild our electric infrastructure where we can. We pretty much have now gone to only doing that in the towns, in the municipality areas where we own the pole infrastructure. We're staying aerial there. But out in the rural footprint now, we're pretty much transitioning to an underground application. And that does parallel with the electric grid resiliency and grid hardening initiatives as well. So we're trying to get as much return on our members' precious capital dollar as we can. But we're basically going in the road right of ways, where we can, is basically our plan now with underground is staying in those road right of ways.
Do you need new easements?
Well, I think you guys just had a session I saw back in February with Mr. Bodine and the Farm Bureau, and you talked about the laws in Illinois, right? Yeah, so we follow the law, Bill. So yes, we are getting easements where we can. And I will tell you, do not underestimate the amount of effort, cost, and time that it takes to go through that initiative. Be very proactive like Champaign County was. Get out there. We work with our Farm Bureau folks. We respect the fact we were born from the Farm Bureau. So we respect landowner rights to its fullest. Absolutely. But that doesn't mean it's not a challenge. It is a challenge. Not everybody understands the value, so we've had some instances where we really have to have potentially 10 conversations, including our CEO sitting at the dining room table with somebody to really help them understand that serving the people beyond their property is a critical function. I always try to pull at the heartstrings and say, at least do it for the kids that are down the street that can't school from home without this. So that usually gets them.
Adrienne?
yeah, Bill, I wanted to make a statement. I found this fascinating, by the way, and I'm glad we ended with Jesse because I was sort of stunned that the companies that have talked with us about their agricultural applications have really had to work around not having connectivity. And so and been very creative about it, from either having scouts or students or interns to pick up data or, use thumb drives in order to get back to some place that has service so that they can upload to the cloud. And I underlined that upload was mentioned a lot of times during those two conversations. So I just imagine what it would be like if we had the connectivity, what it would do in terms of saving time at these companies, but more importantly, saving time from the farmers. So Jesse, I know you, so that's a wind up to ask you a question. Did you not speak to me about the fact that you're thinking of working with a farmer to do sort of a model farm using the fiber technology to run things more efficiently? Because that would be very cool.
Absolutely. And again, this is where, and thank you for bringing it up, Adrienne, because I even learned, coming on and being able to listen to Sean and Lydia, and I know we have RFS groups back here. So I'm going to make sure that, I contact them and let them know what's going on down more in the central part of the state. But yeah, absolutely. I want to make sure that I'm introducing technologies to the right groups, like technologies to farmers, and then those service providers, I just want to figure out how can we be an enabler to remove any barriers, especially if it's a connectivity barrier. That's where we fit in perfect.
Yeah, it's really clear. It's cellular plus fiber. It's a combination. It's what we've talked about: wireless in the fields, fiber to the home office or the farmhouse. So, thank you, Jesse.
Good. And then there's, I'm going to ask one final question. Well, two things. Jesse, if you could provide the citations for those white papers you talked about on the ROI and of the economic impact.
Oh,
that'd be great.
Yeah,
then,
absolutely.
Yeah, after the fact. And then can you talk about what you, your business model as to how you're going to make this pay for itself?
Yeah, so the co-op model, we're a multi-divisional co-op. So 100% of this is in the co-op model. So that's why grants are so important to us, because we only have so much capital that we can spend at any one time. So we're, like anybody else, we're still running a business, and we need to remain fiscally responsible on behalf of our members. So really we're just watching all of our, the standard debt service coverage ratios and all the key financial indicators to where we build what we can afford to build. And we're trying to do it as fast as we possibly can. The grants have been huge. Now I'll tell you, the back end, the general public, and this is another thing, is public, or for us, we call it member expectation, the good, the bad, the ugly, because once you start, you won't be able to build fast enough. That's for sure. And we experienced that, and we knew that going into it, but that's a good problem to have, because it means you're building it and people want it. But yeah, it's all under the co-op model, is what we're doing. And we're really,
you're like at a 10 or 12-year return.
So when you look at it from like an ROI perspective, general rule of thumb is we try to pick projects that are somewhere in that 10-year range. As we can do 10 years or better, then that's a pretty solid project in terms of managing, risk on behalf of the members. So, we can tolerate a longer payback more than like somebody who's really just focused on, say, a for-profit initiative, where they're going to come in, start it up, and maybe just do an equity flip in 5 years and write off with some pretty big profit margin. So, that's not how we work. We're co-op. Everything that we make is a margin. It either gets reinvested right back into the system to continue to grow out our rural communities, or it goes back to the members in capital credits.
Good, thank you. Thank you, Jesse. Thank you so much for joining us today. It was super interesting, and it's fun to see what you're doing in Whiteside County, and working with the other communities to really roll that out.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd like to just put one more plug in, if I could, Bill. So I'm going to be headed to Washington on Sunday, actually, to meet with legislators on Capitol Hill on a lot of broadband topics. And, we stay very active. That's obviously key. And we all know that, whether it's at the State House or in DC. And one of the areas that we're going to be discussing with some of our legislators is going to be, and Adrienne, and I know you guys do great work and have done many publications on this, is the definition of broadband speed by the FCC. And at the end of the day, if you were to ask me, and I could just rip the Band-Aid off and say, if we really want to put the US and our rural communities on the global map of competition and all the things, then, you saw that graph. By 2030, we're going to need speeds that are in the 4 gig arena to mess around at what was 10 by 1 and then 25/3. And now we're contemplating 100 by 20 to 100 by 100. At this point, we need to be multi-gig or more as the target, because if you don't set your target, you're never going to get there. And I just think, just keep that in mind in terms of, if you're going to do something and invest these precious dollars, that would be my takeaway, is to just make sure that you invest it in something that's going to be scalable well into the future for you.
Good. Jesse, thanks so much for your perspective and leadership.
Absolutely. Thank you all for the same.
Good. Good.
Good luck,
Well,
everyone.
it's time for our breakout rooms. And I just wanted to take a minute and talk a little bit about the upcoming planning processes. I've already given you a kind of a template. I got a question from a county about, well, we're not quite ready to have a final presentation. And I think we really want to emphasize that wherever you are in the process now, in terms of the plans and provider partners, we really want to get, whether this is a final report or an interim report, to kind of use this opportunity over the next couple of weeks to set a marker in the ground for a plan and commit to future activities that will lead to projects. And so that's our goal over the next 2 weeks, is to make that happen. And so as I work with you, and if we have 2 meetings, the first one is really, what have we learned? And so let's look at the survey results, let's look at the maps, let's look at the provider interview results, kind of the results of all your discussions around vision and what you hope to accomplish, and then move from there to how we're going to get to those from where we are to where you want to get to. And with some communities, many communities, we do that in one session. Some take two. Some are continuing that conversation on into the future. But don't worry too much about that word final, because we've mentioned before, this is a really dynamic process and ongoing. So, but if you decide you want to hold off on a meeting with your county board till you're more final than you are at the end of the next couple of weeks, that's really fine too. This is your judgment and your project. So we'll go from there. So hopefully that answers some questions. I'm going to be around to, Robbie just put a link in the chat for the registration for the event in Bloomington to do the presentations and have a little celebration lunch, and hopefully we can have a good crowd there. We'll also have the presentations on Zoom, so you can not miss it if you can't spend the day going back and forth to Bloomington. So make sure you fill out that so we can make sure we have a lunch for you, and it's a lunch you can eat if you have any kind of dietary issues there. Adrienne, do you have anything you'd like to say?
Usually sorry, I had to take myself off mute. No, I actually don't, Bill, believe it or not, except for please fill out the form. We have to do some planning. I just want to reiterate that. So even if you can't fill it out right now, just click on it so it remains on your computer and do it afterwards. That would be great. And Bill, that starts at 10 o'clock. We'll do probably about a 2 to 2.5 hours presentation, Q&A of all the groups, and then break for lunch, and you should be back on the road by 1:30. And Bill and I and Robbie and Grace, I think Mary Gay, I think you said yes, but you'll be able to catch up with your many of your community liaisons and get to see your compatriots that have gone through this process with you. So again, if you can attend, we'd love to see you. And if not, there will be the remote option. Thank you, Bill.
Mm-hmm.
Bill, Robbie, this is Mark in McLean County. Clicking on that link, it looks like it's designated for the team leader to complete. Is that accurate, Robbie? The very first answer is team leader, first and last name, email, and then additional team members and contact info. So I guess my question is, do we fill it out individually, or does everybody tell, like in my case?
Yeah,
Tony?
hold on.
Yeah, I think our plan was to have the team leader do it.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll do it. We'll leave it with the original plan.
Good. Nancy, thank you as always for your efforts, and everyone look for an email from us going forward about the planning and the surveys and so on. So thank you very much, everyone.